So good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you are in the world. Talent Finders would like to welcome your CEO and Brand Master at Together by Dr. Karina Ochis, serial entrepreneur, author, speaker, and coach, Dr. Karina Ochis. So welcome, Karina.
Hello, Karen. I'm very happy to be here with you today. And I think, and I hope we will have an enticing conversation
Yes,
for you and your audience.
thank you. So, Karina, firstly, I'd like to congratulate you on all your achievements. Can you please share with us more about your entrepreneurial journey and how it started?
Well, I think I could have never been anything else apart from being an entrepreneur. It was never even a question in my mind whether I wanted to be anything else. And I have always been aware, I think, of the pioneering role that was meant for me. And I was always interested in the lives of the people who left their mark on history. So from a young age, I started studying these people, the people who made their mark. I've studied the art of fame and glory as well as the people who attained it. And I started learning that they have a certain way of doing things, a certain behavior. And I started emulating my behavior in such a manner. And by the time I moved to London at age 17 to pursue politics at Queen Mary University of London, I was already a youth European trainer, high school valedictorian, a published author, and an artist in my home country in Romania.
Yes.
And so having the background of an artist and studies in cross disciplines, I naturally gravitated towards branding. Of course, in the beginning, I didn't know what branding was. It was an underdeveloped domain. I used to call it the story formula. And throughout time, I really wanted to develop a service that I knew everyone will need in the future, namely next generation branding. I've entered the business world, as you know, in the United States as a consultant, and I started advising entrepreneurs, professionals, and experts on how to tell their stories and sell their services in the digital world. And although I've started gaining a worldwide presence, I've returned to Romania to revolutionize the tourism and hospitality industry. I've took over the family business, which grew exponentially from a small boutique hotel to a resort with many acclamations. And you see, my health journey, as well as my frequent interactions with entrepreneurs and various professionals who suffered from burnout and other adjacent issues, has catalyzed me to open Elite Life Medical Resort as a medical recovery center. But you see, that wasn't enough for me. So I realized that neither elite branding nor outstanding leadership was possible without personal and professional development. And through my study, I've realized that the next generations lacked both adequate role models and the access to written information on how to lead fulfilling and prosperous lives. So my quest for information heightened, and I traveled throughout the world in search of knowledge that I could impart with others, hoping to become the role model I've never had. And so through my public speeches, trainings, consultations, interviews, and publications, I try to share the results of my study and offer implementable advice to all those interested in transformative concepts. And just to add to the entrepreneurship part, so currently I run KO by Karina Ochis. This is a next generation branding and marketing company. Through elite consulting and high-end digital services, clients are provided with luxury products for brand management. It is a full service company that offers personal branding, company and product branding, political branding, employer branding, marketing, and advertising. And apart from that, as a serial entrepreneur, I'm constantly creating and developing innovative businesses. I am the CEO of Elite Resort Hotel and Elite Medical Resort here in Romania, for which we've received, as I said, numerous awards and acclamations, such as the best luxury medical spa in Eastern Europe and many others. So really, that catalyzed and fashioned my career as a speaker. As a speaker, I focus on the future, and I've informed worldwide audiences during the last, let's say, decade at events such as TEDx or Million Marketing Tour, Women Speakers Summits, leadership conferences, the Academy of Economic Studies, Rome Business School, and various other events and workshops throughout the world. I'm now also a guest lecturer, and I hold a position of Professor of Management at Monarch Business School in Institute in Switzerland.
Wow, amazing. Well, congratulations. So I want to touch on branding. As we are in the middle of a global pandemic and massive world changes, what do you believe from a branding perspective has changed? And what are some of the changes within your own business you have had to make for not only your business, but also your clients? And can you give us some examples?
I think first and foremost, there has been a rise of awareness pertaining to branding.
Okay.
Because branding is a very hot topic at the moment, but not many people know what true branding actually is. So what is branding? Branding is the strategic management of perceptions, and it is the process that tries to help the individual or the product or the company position him or herself at an elevated level in comparison with the competition. And I think that is something that most people didn't really understand. I've been seeing a lot of entrepreneurs thinking, oh, a brand is just having a logo or just having a website, and it is really not.
No,
and
that's just an aesthetic aspect to the branding.
Exactly. It's just one of the elements that make up a brand, but a brand is formed from many elements, and it usually starts with an analysis followed by a strategy, and then you create the elements such as business cards, websites, blogs, elevator pitches, and so on and so forth. And I think many people realize that now because of the pandemic, we have to be present in the online sphere, but they were underprepared to be present in the online world at the level that was expected.
100%.
And now at a personal level, I've been experiencing some changes. Of course, with the branding business, things have been going well because we're seeing an increase of people who, as I said, realized we've not been doing our branding the right way. We should reach out to a professional that can guide and maybe do it for us. And then as a speaker, unfortunately, all of my events were canceled or transferred in the virtual world. And as a professor, I have been teaching online now because of the pandemic. Now, because I also own a resort hotel, obviously, we had to suspend our activities for about 3 months, and we've seen profit declines. But I think it made us all realize that the most important thing is to ensure the safety and the health of our clients, of our collaborators, and of our staff. And another change I think we're seeing right now is a lot of leaders asking themselves, how do we transfer our leadership in the online world? And it is something I've been asking myself quite frequently, because like leaders, we manage to motivate people in person. But when we have to work remote, there comes the question of how do we write those persuasive emails, or how do we set up our CRM systems? How do we manage to get people to do what needs to be done? So our whole leadership has to change to digital leadership as a result of the pandemic.
Absolutely. So you have a passion for the creative. Did this help you to lean into branding? And what do you believe to be different about your agency and your service offering?
I've always had a creative side. As I said, I used to be a painter, and I think this really helped me to be able to find creative solutions to problems. And as a leader, I try to teach my followers creative thinking as well as visualization. It is not enough to be goal-oriented or to have a highly developed analytical side, you do need to be, I believe, creative in order to be a successful entrepreneur. So my creative side definitely played a role in that. And then in regards to the services that we do offer a holistic service, as I said, and we have a true understanding of branding, which I think is not something that a lot of agencies do. Yes, you have a lot of agencies who do a number of services, but an agency which is able to do an analysis and an evaluation and give you the steps that you need to actually implement in order to reach that level is quite scarce.
Yes.
Plus, I live what I preach and I practice what I preach in the sense that my businesses have received acclamations, and I, as a personal brand, taking into account my age and the fact that I come from Eastern Europe, is quite at an elevated level. So you know that what I'm teaching my clients or what I'm consulting is the real deal in a sense, and that really, makes a difference. And the service in itself is discreet and client-oriented and very quick. And I've assembled a team of devoted professionals that collaborate in providing this complete and time-effective and qualitative service.
Yes, absolutely. So in this, what would you say some of your biggest lessons and learnings have been within your career?
One of the most important things for me is to be in a symbiosis with the system or with the product, the service that I'm trying to better or change.
Yes.
And in other words, I avoid being superficial, and I try to be, and I know you agree with this because you are also all in everything that you do.
Yes.
And so I think this is very important as an entrepreneur and as a business person, to be all in and to feel that breathing organism, that living organism that is your business. And when you manage to truly sense that business is when you start being able to perform.
Yes.
And then I always plan for the best as well as the worst case scenario.
Yes.
And therefore I am never underprepared. I think a lot of entrepreneurs, especially when they're starting out, you have a tendency to think to plan just for the best case scenario. And oftentimes the best case scenario the best case scenario is not attainable. So you need to also plan for the worst case scenario. And that way you are never underprepared, and you always know, you always have resources for whatever happens.
Yes,
absolutely. And then I always hire candidates based on the match between their self-concept and the job that they will be performing. So just to explain on this idea, of course, all of us entrepreneurs read a lot of HR blogs and are quite adept in hiring candidates. And yet we find that most candidates, or that not all candidates who appear great on paper, are actually the ones that are most efficient or are the ones that are most appropriate for our businesses.
Yes.
So what I find is the one thing that makes a difference is whether the job that I'm giving to a person, to an employee, to a subordinate, is a job in which they see themselves, a job that they see themselves doing, and a job about which they're enthusiastic. I think that is the key element in hiring and retaining your people.
Absolutely. So,
and then, please.
Sorry, carry on.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, and then, of course, you hire these people, and then you need to be a model of behavior as a leader for them. So I always try to be the hardest working person in the room.
Yes.
And then they are motivated to also be hardworking as well, because being hardworking is the way to be and is the company culture.
Of course. Of course. So that leads me to the next question. As you are a coach and author, this seems to be an industry that is oversaturated. So what do you believe you have done and do differently, and what is unique in your style within this industry that no one else is doing?
So just to give your audience maybe a bit of background on that. So I'm a professional coach. I'm accredited by Tony Robbins through the prestigious Robbins Madanitz Coaching Institute, and I use strategic intervention to help a select group of individuals attain professional and personal success, because as we know, professional and personal success do have to go hand in hand.
Yeah.
Of course. And I've developed my own formula on achieving success in the digital era named the Olympics of Life, which was even presented at TEDx.
Oh, wow. Okay. Well done.
And so through this formula, I'm a constant catalyst for development. And I coach in several domains: leadership, entrepreneurship, business, personal and professional development, and of course in all types of branding. And then as an author, I co-authored the Amazon bestseller Cracking the Code to Success together with Brian Tracy, which I'm sure everyone knows about. And in this book, I've elaborated a formula on elite personal branding, which is a combination of branding and personal development that needs to be implemented in order for the speaker or the coach or the professional to reach that elite level. And then apart from that book, I've also released several others, such as The Influence of Social Media on U.S. Presidential Campaigns, and my latest book, The Impact of Virtual Reality on Political Marketing, which has been published by Lambert Academic Publishing and is available worldwide. So my books are pioneering in a way. The last one, for instance, in a way of evaluating the nexus between virtual reality and political marketing. And this was something that at that time was a novel concept. No one wrote about it before. So to answer your questions, I try to keep my ideas fresh and clean and timeless. And I never copy what someone else says. And I think this is a very important aspect that most speakers and authors and coaches do not realize. Of course, you can get inspired by the works of other great and successful individuals, but you do need to convey your aura of authenticity, and you do need to come up with novel ideas and actually help your audiences attain and gain some value. And this is a thing that I feel is understated at the moment for most coaches and authors. And this really made a difference for me. And then my personal brand, of course, because I had a personal brand, whenever I write or coach, I speak to individuals who are interested in transformative concepts, and I speak the ideas of the next generation. And I think I have a very clear niche on that. So these would be the functions that I think help me gain attraction and have my own niche in the industry.
Absolutely. So what would you say some of your career highlights have been?
Well,
there's probably been many, but one that stand out to you the most.
I think I don't contemplate the past as much as I should. Because you see, I'm very future oriented. I think you should learn from the past and then focus on the future. But I do think, it's interesting to think about it. When I started with my journey, and I remember I was having my first employee, and we were sitting in a much smaller office than I have right now. And I was writing on a flip chart all the things that we will be going to achieve in the next, let's say, 10 years. And now as I'm looking back, just as you asked me this question, I realized that so many of those were actually achieved. So, from starting my businesses, I've started a branding business when I was 17. At that time in Eastern Europe, no one even knew what branding was. No one believed that was even possible. And then transforming the family business and having it be recognized and growing it and having it at a much prosperous, transforming it in a much prosperous business is, of course, something to be very proud of. Then Yeah, and then in terms of my education, I've been a valedictorian um, from Rome Business School in political marketing. I have 2 doctorates, and I'm now a professor of management, which is something that I hold very close to my heart. The books are highlights of my career, and especially receiving the Quilly Award in Hollywood, California for the book I co-authored with Brian Tracy on the same stage where the first edition of the Oscars took place is definitely a highlight of my career. Being on a TEDx stage and generally speaking on these international stages and having people of different cultures come to me and discuss with me potential development ideas um, makes one feel very fulfilled.
Yeah.
And I think all the prizes and accolades that I got, in Istanbul, in Cairo, from Santa Barbara, and St. Petersburg, for different parts of my business endeavors, are highlights of my career that I am very proud of. And in their own way, all of these achievements helped me become who I am today.
Absolutely. So as you are Doctor of Applied Leadership and a PhD candidate, can you share with us more about this? I also want to talk to you about leadership or the lack of leadership in the current narrative. So what do you believe needs to change from both a business perspective as well as a global perspective? And what do you believe you do differently within your own leadership style? And can you give us some examples? Sorry, I know that's a chunk, but...
Yeah, so we have 3 or 4 questions under the same umbrella.
Yeah.
I'm going to try and answer each of them, but if I do miss something, please come back to me and we'll circle back to that. Yes, so I'm doing 2 doctorates in leadership, and I'm a professor of management. And what I'm really interested in is harnessing an operational, functional dynamic in between generations in the workplace.
Okay.
So we live at an unprecedented time. It is a time in which one manager has to ensure the engagement of 4 different generations in one office. You have Generation X that is now just penetrating the market. You have Generation Y, the millennials. You have Generation X, and you have boomers. And all of these people, unfortunately, cannot seem to find a way to work with one another in a way that it is efficient. And because of this constant intergenerational conflict, we are seeing that the youngest generations are not having the mentors that they need in order to become effective professionals. Moreover, this is costing billions and billions of dollars because 85% of the global workforce are not engaged in their work. They do not find meaning in their work, and many of them are not interested in their work. And that is why most companies are seeing such high turnover. And this is why most companies have problems with both hiring and retainment.
Okay.
And the main issue why that happens is because all these generations that have to work together have different ways of perceiving and doing things. So just to give you an example, Generation X would like to get weekly or daily feedback. Yeah. Now, boomers, the oldest generations, like to have their annual once per year report.
Yeah.
But millennials like to have on-demand feedback. So you should only give them feedback as a manager when they ask for your feedback. And the youngest generation, Generation Z, they like to get continuous feedback, and they like to get instant feedback because they perceive life in a way in which they perceive social media. You know, on social media, you put a picture up, you get a like instantaneously. And they think
so
that a leader should...
Exactly.
Exactly, instant gratification. And they expect their leaders to be able to perform in the same way. And as you can imagine, at this moment in time, we lack a coherent model of leadership that encompasses all generations. And this is what my research is on, and this is where my interest lies at, and hopefully my next book is going to tackle this topic.
But also, don't you think in saying that, and it's something that a couple of people that I've spoken to have said, is that you can have good leaders and you can have good leadership, but it's the basic fundamentals of the systems that they are within are broken. It doesn't matter how good the leadership is, if the system is broken, it's never going to be effective.
We're definitely seeing this issue as social scientists, because up until, let's say, a few decades ago, all the focus in leadership literature was leader-centric. So as you know, there are tons of books on how to become a great leader. From the 18th century onwards, we're seeing theorists analyze the traits of great leaders and what makes a leader great. Is it their charisma? Is it their background, their education? And yet, we haven't found an answer, precisely because leadership takes a leader and a follower. Leadership is not an absolute concept. It is a relative concept, and it depends. You can only be a leader if you have someone to lead, namely a follower. It is a dualistic concept. The problem is most companies and most cultures still insist on honing only leadership skills, but we're not honing followership skills, which are those skills of being and making a good follower for that precise leader. But now we're seeing a transformation in leadership theory in that we're centering on follower-centric theory. And that is why, and I'm sure you've read this in outlets such as Business Insider or Harvard Business Review, transformational leadership. Everyone starts talking about transformational leadership, which is a type of leadership in which you as a leader try to bring out the potential, the maximum potential of your follower through any means necessary. And there are a few more theories like this, such as the path goal theory and other such theories that are based on coaching and supporting. So yes, I'm agreeing with you in the sense that the system is broken because we're not teaching people how to be good followers to leaders, and also we're not teaching leaders how to be good to their followers and how to transform them into leaders themselves. You know, it is good to be king, but it is better to be king maker, and that is what we should be teaching our leaders, really.
Sure. So you have a passion for women and leadership. Why do you think women struggle with leadership, and why is your focus on women? And what is it that you want to achieve when you focus on women in leadership?
Well, I mean, of course, being a woman, I'm interested in how we can transform the female model of leadership. And I would like to become a champion for women and to make my mark in the sense that I would like for women to live at a time and in a place in which they can choose their own narrative. And by that I'm saying that as a woman you should be permitted by society, if you want, to be a homemaker, and that should be enough. If that's what you want from life, that should be enough. And you shouldn't be stigmatized for not being a working mother, for instance. But at the same time, if you do not want to focus on a family and you want to focus on a business, you should not be stigmatized either. So that's what I'm saying by claiming that I would like to be a champion of women and to show women that we can make our own stories and we can make our own route to success. We do not have to succumb ourselves to someone else's standards, which unfortunately is very true in most societies throughout the world. And of course, this aim of mine has been brought up to me through my experiences as a young entrepreneur in Eastern Europe. Now, while in Eastern Europe, women are not oppressed in a sense, the business environment is very much a male-oriented and dominating environment in which women are not necessarily championed into becoming leaders. And this is something I've been struggling with, and it was very hard to me to break out of the mold and become the type of woman leader that I wanted to be.
Yes.
And then I'm just going to turn back to theory a little bit. So ever since women have been receiving more leadership roles, we're seeing two main models of leadership. We're seeing the male model of leadership versus the female model of leadership.
Yes.
And now the male model of leadership is what we now consider a good leader. So a good leader is usually male, he's domineering, he's authoritarian, he's decisive, he's efficient, he can give clear answers to questions. And that is what we expect of our male leaders.
Yeah.
Whereas we expect our female leaders, whether they're supervisors or managers at any level, we expect them to be cooperating and supporting and participative and talkative and to smile all the time.
Yes.
So, and society as well as employees have these expectations of their female leaders. However, I do think with Generation Z, with this Generation Z leaders, we are going to see a more neutral model of leadership. And I'm very interested to see how that all plays out.
Absolutely. So that leads me to the last two questions. What are the 3 key pieces of advice you would give to other entrepreneurs, and what legacy or how would you like to be remembered?
I would like to focus the attention of entrepreneurs on the long term. I think now we live in a world of instant gratification, as you just said, and we live in a world where we can gain access to anything in a moment, and that made us all anxious and antsy, and we want everything now, and we want all of it now. And as an entrepreneur, you oftentimes have to sacrifice short-term pleasures for your long-term gains and objectives. So you do need, sorry?
I said 100%.
Exactly, and you know this very well. It takes, the entrepreneurial journey is a very lonely and long process, and you do need to keep your head down and do the work, even though you might want to entertain yourself or engage in small pleasures. You do not have the luxury of doing that.
No.
So always play the long game, I would say. And this is a piece of advice I've learned from Barbara Corcoran, hire people to complement your strengths.
Yes.
Yes, it is a good idea to also work, because all of us have strengths and weaknesses. And if you have weaknesses, it is a good idea to try to overcome your weaknesses and turn them into opportunities.
Yes.
However, that takes a while. So meanwhile, try to hire people to complement your strengths. So for instance, if I'm very charismatic and very creative and I have an ability to draw people in, I'm a visionary and like to see long term, I definitely knew that I needed to hire someone who is detail oriented, someone who is meticulous, and someone who can do the day-to-day management of the operations.
Yes.
And being able to hire people who complement me helped me greatly. But you also do need to hire people with your vision and people who understand and embody your vision, because otherwise you cannot attain your goal.
No.
And lastly, I think we're not talking about timing enough. There is a right time to fulfill any dream, and there definitely isn't the right time to do so.
Yes.
And finding the fine line between the two is everyone's greatest mission. And oftentimes we are just so eager that we're not waiting for the right time to either approach a prospect or close a deal or pivot to another company. So we do need to focus on the timing of things as
Yes,
entrepreneurs.
absolutely. And then what legacy or how would you like to be remembered?
Well, I would like to make my mark, as I've said, in a significant way in the sense of next generation leadership.
Yes,
And I would like to be remembered for the notable contribution, small or big, that I've made to next generation leadership and in leading the way for the future generations of leaders, as well as being a champion
yes,
of women. And as I've said through my research, I am trying to bridge the gap between generations, which is something that I feel we're not focusing as a society on enough. But
yeah,
more than legacy, it's also important to live, as I'm sure you know, a fulfilled life. So I would
yes,
like to become the mentor that I never had while I was growing up. And I would
yes,
like to embody the change that I so longed for seeked.
yes. That's amazing. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. And if people want to connect with you, what are the best platforms to do so?
They can find me on my website, that is karinaochis.com. It's Karina with a K, and then it's Ochis. And you can find me on social media. I'm on LinkedIn, Instagram, and Facebook. You can drop me a line on any of those if you want to discuss any of these ideas forward.
Great. Well, thank you so much for joining us, and hopefully we can have you back in the future to see where you are in your entrepreneurial journey.
Thank you, Karen, for having me.